I met a man on my journey, far older than I. He'd come from places I'd never see. He lay pointed, hands stretched on the onward, pointing to places he'd never be. He spoke in repose. He carried his own weight. He'd died at the gate unopened. I sat for a time in the presence of his past and fed from the richness he'd gained. I felt fear of beginning to finish unfinished. And I thought of those following, those who will meet me at my limit, at my gate unopened. Hello. That was a poem written back in 1990, 31 years ago. To have gone no further than this. And I can see on it like the glitteriness of youth and inexperience on it. But I chose it because it sort of begins our journey and our theme today. Jokingly, I called it poems Dreary, Eerie, Affable, Terrible, Horrible. Which of course spells out death. So you have been warned. It's not so much about death, because I don't know anything about death. I've never been there. Not I remember. But I have spent some time trying to relate to it and come to terms with it and see it on the horizon getting closer. And so although these poems don't necessarily say anything about it or even what I think about it now, they're poems on the journey to whatever understanding I have it now. So I hope you fancy coming along, having a listen. That one, just gone, does speak of what is left unfinished by our end. And there's a couple of others here that touch on that feeling of incompleteness, of being unfinished. Conclusion. Seeking a way to end this sentence, to stop with this sentence and not start another, but I expect I will die mid-speech. Is that short enough? I always seem to want it longer. I thought of, is there time to do all the things you want to do? Give rise to the idea of a bucket list. And what if you actually succeeded in completing that list? This poem is called Bucket List. It's there to do. The final thing. And then the bucket, as it were, is full. The last slow tick. And what is then to do but stand amazed that there was time enough? Aghast, perhaps, at living longer than your life. The final thing. And so to take the step toward the leap, the final necessary breath, your life behind you in a heap of sand, and there before you only sea and long returning waves. Or else be caught, the last item on the list, a sheer edge beyond which flies the last unwanted thought, to seek to make it perfect and discreet. Some things perhaps are kinder incomplete. Bucket list. It's something that starts to encroach upon your thinking, I don't know, from when did it start for you? Perhaps every 0 year, so 30, 40, 50, being reminded each time. I think it was kind of around about 50 when it seemed to be closer than the beginning. That thoughts and reflections upon what it is start encroaching our minds, going downhill. Perhaps it is curiosity will lead us finally into death. Hence the cat, hence the valley. Knowing now that age has many mysteries, while youth has none. Youth has no mystery but what it's not, as a mountain has no mystery upon its top, while going downhill every way is found in fresh and new surprise, and mystery surrounds all that we forgot, and all which never came before our eyes. Every step meaning more and more things that we never did. And that sense of its impending, of course, for some, it's brought on far earlier. Not by natural aging, but by events. And then you're living with the thought of it at a much younger, earlier time. The caves. I came to these caves, wet mouths within the rock, many years before my time. But I was not alone. I had walked with my mother, while her legs eroded, shared her way. And once she was laid to rest, set into stone, and nevermore moved, I felt the lick of the remaining empty spaces, calling so many. And though I lay me down to sleep amongst the dust of those go stirring by, and though I wake to hear the shuffling off of skins along the way, and though I gaze into their vases as they break, that simple glimpse of life's finality, that closing of the rock, remains a mother's love, singing to me and so many. The caves. It's hard to know if any of these are about the fact of death, or whether they're just about ideas of death, or even about fears of death, which I sometimes wonder isn't fear of death at all, but fear of something else, something that catches up with us, something that takes us beyond our control, and we won't be ready for it yet. And other things maybe, you might have your own thoughts. But the sense of its approach, which can wake us up at night and be fretful again, I don't know if it is that fear. Perhaps we just dress that fear in the fear of death. And it's really something else that we're scared of. But anyway, this is called Sleeping Partner. Since death has lain his head upon my pillow, he whispers nothing from his hollow chest, sets emptiness against my naked breast, then holds the blood, draws the breath from shallow clamouring for more to a final rest. And for the first and last, I know myself erased, disappeared into the end gulf. No thought to see my melting body dressed. Do I start? Is what's left to me enough, 1 foot already in his bed, to tame, to turn to doing things in my own name with warm and easy muscle of my health? An undisturbed life lets him sleep, forsaken, lying quiet through the night lest he waken. Sleeping partner. Is it spooky? Is it eerie? Is it dreary? They're trying to be affable. It could all be terrible and horrible too. This next one, I don't know whether this is a denial of it or an acceptance of it. Called, Are You Doing Anything Special? He approached his imminent death with a gentle stroll, and what he would do afterwards, he didn't know. He wondered if a party, if a do might be the thing to mark with style this dramatic turning, but then he did not wish to be over full with busyness and preoccupied, not ready, as it were, on the boat to catch the tide. The executionee must feel the same, taking calm and gentle breaths, eating well-proportioned bites, not tearing up the walls in the night. Looking back, he thought, in years to come, he might regret not doing something to mark the event like other people do. But he always was a quiet one, kept things to himself. Besides, there will be other days to do something else. Are you doing anything special? And then there's this one called Green. Should you still have fear of death, give it me, for I have none, and I shall face him down whene'er he come, and roar it to his teeth, however much he take, still he shall leave some to life, and never get it all. For what serves it he to have the last thing fall and nothing left alive to see his victory? Life thus to be saved by death's vanity. Since he knows life never shall be gone, death seeks to lord it over all with threats of how I'll get you sorry at your sorry end. That may be so, but not till then, my friend. So death has fear of life in all its majesty. Come, gather round, lament of poor death's tragedy. It seems I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and writing about this. As I say, it may not be about death at all. It may be something else. I'll just very quickly note here, I'm not going to... a lot of them last year, the year before, 1920, I spent writing this immense poem called The King of Death. And it is immense. I was writing a verse for it every day, pretty much. So that's 365 verses plus one. And the tale of it, the thought of it was that a man finds himself swapping places with someone he understands to be the King of Death. And so he spends the year himself as the King of Death. Nobody knows because he looks identical. One of the days I shall try reading the whole of it. Or maybe fragments of it, because it's so unwieldy I don't know what to do with it. But here it is, The King of Death. I'm just going to read the one verse from it. Every verse is 9 lines long. This word you use, death, what does it mean? Well, you are the king of the dead. You must know. You are king of the dead. It does not mean this word you use what do you think it means. So that's a little trailer for the immense poem that is The King of Death. Now, you may know that as and when I'm able to, because I can't invite anybody here to read alongside and have a guest to give a different voice, I read from a friend's published work. And I'm going to do so today. And for the first time, this is somebody's second appearance. I did read from theirs a long time ago, but just the one. Well, usually you read a few. And they do have more than one book. And I was thinking also, which poet would actually welcome their poems being read amongst a bunch about death? The only person I could think of who might is my friend Winspear. And this is her other book, The Awkward People. So I'm hoping she doesn't mind surprising her by reading a couple from it. These are against our theme. They don't mention death at all, I don't think. So, to take our minds elsewhere, there's this one. Safe Harbour. As Orson Welles said on the wheel, in times of strife and chaos, art will thrive. If that were true, these nervous times will show a huge resurgence of creative arts. The last night buses will convey 1,000 stories, insight deep to counteract abusive, angry words, and sonnets will be piled up high behind the food bank doors. Mystic sculptures will adorn the polling booths and arias resound in job centres. When transatlantic news reports tell tales of unimagined power handed to sour white men with ugly views, a generation will enchant us with new thoughts that no one ever dared to think before. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe what we need are some few souls, shining like lanterns on a headland late at night, warning ships of rocks they must avoid, warning of hazards, lights to show the way, and guide them safely through the breaking storms that swamped and wrecked our fragile fleet. Guide them with their dear and honest beams into safe harbour. And another by my friend Saz Winspear, called Aspen Girl. The child was brought out from the forest by hunters, the rustling dark fox realm of trees and of seasons where she had been born, a wild thing in nature as she should be. They took her, this wild thing, into their world. Like Aspen, she trembled. The voices, the sounds all around her, they scared her. The touch of rough fabric repulsed her, and hands on her shoulder were meant to be kind, but smelled human and wrong, and they weren't reassuring. Shrinking from touch, she returned in her mind to her stories, the tales she would tell in the forest, and painted her handprints on walls of a cave by the water. Her dreams and her visions, those unwritten legends, the myths of the spirits and beings that danced in the woods, the spirits by whom she had always felt wanted and loved. But humans, those humans, they banged on her door, they pulled her outside to the streets and the school, trying to make her be social like them. She did what she could as she learned of their world, tried hard to fit in. They laughed at her awkwardness out in the sunlight, the one place she never should be, when she needed the shade of the forest. They made her pretend to be human like them. She tried as she could and pretended, but knew she would not get it right. For she was the Aspen girl, wrenched from the forest, friend to the animals, knowing that world in its depths, from the loam to the leaf fall, and voices of creatures that snuffle in woodland at night. The playground kids laughed at her, mocked her. She didn't look right, didn't play right, she wasn't like them. Yet though Aspen looks delicate, trembles in winds, it's a tree that can withstand a tempest. In time she escaped and went back to the forest, told her stories of humans to spirits and animals, all that would listen to her. They heard all her stories, they laughed at the humans, welcomed her back to their world, to the legends again, to the cave and the firelight. For that was her true realm, the one place in which she belonged. She was home. The Aspen Girl by Winspear. In her book, The Awkward People, I've no idea who she could be referring to. Published by Black Pear Press, that one. Also published my Sabrina Bridge. So thank you, Suz, for that. And who knows, might come back to that again one of the days. How are you doing out there? Hope you're well. Let's have a quick look to see if we have any messages. Often very difficult to say. We'll see. Carlos, are you there? I hope so. Good to see you. Thank you. If you do come in late or miss it or anything like that, that video does go to the timeline afterwards. So, to return to the theme, our joyful, jolly theme. As I said, stepping over 45, stepping over 50, I have a sense of how long or short time is. You can't help but have a sense of, the end of things is much closer and much more real than it ever was as a child. I can see it from here, which I could not before. And though it is by no means near the silent, blackened door, I wonder what there is of it yet to fear. The road or roads that to this threshold run, not in any smooth or open way, promising neither stone or storm or sun, neither lull or dog's awaited day, remain unpaved, unbeaten, mine to lay. With every step, the destination shifts. Now to the sun, now the night, now looming far across a dale bestrewn with gifts, or swooping near, a swallow's flight skimmed across the chalky down and meadow bright. And feeling journey's end descend on me, I wonder if the distance is too much, too far, to find the strength, nonsensically, to get there. When the case is such that there, however far I reach, is where it will be. So what is yet to fear? For all its ever-presence across the valley floor, as every step or moment's blinking brings it near, and out beyond is never more it shall be ever only what it ever was. Only not here. Not here. And death shall have its day. Because it is bizarre. Occasionally I've thought, okay, yeah, there's death and dying at the end there, but oh, do I have the energy to actually get there? I don't know if I can manage. Oh. So that's not necessarily about death at all, is it? That's more about, how do I stay alive? Deathbed. It goes on. I will run out of air. Given. My blood will stop. It may even run out of me. My heart will pull a handbrake turn. Fact. Or so I've been promised. Told. So what shall I fear? Now that I've had enough life, I've slept with life often, lying here next to them, wanting to shake them awake, to ask them, what should I be? With the only answer from life being, happy to see me? Fear, perhaps, of not getting enough. Air, wheat, space, meat, love, likes. Fear, perhaps, that somehow the world will turn against me, leave me to burn. Always enough air, till there is none. Always too much fear, till it is gone. Till the heat of this body is given up to the street, and my naked face surrenders to another's grace. Fossilized in time, my empty space, the puncture in the world where the air ran out. But really, love has so few conduits through which to grow. I think even he would be sorry to see me go. You've got 5 more. I mean, not very long ones, but if you can stick around. 5 more before we get to the end, and they're all about the end. The word doom's a funny thing. I first heard it in Dad's Army, of course, saying, we're doomed, we're doomed. We've not a real thought of what it meant. I mean, other than thinking a sense of condemned or fated or something along those lines. Studying Old English, you find the word doom, and it doesn't mean to die necessarily. It doesn't mean condemned even at all. It does talk though of a kind of a judgment, an appraisal. So doomsday, as in Doomsday Book, is not like the day of, well, is it? That's not the end day. It's a day of reckoning because they're reckoning up the taxes. That's all it means. So the funny thing about doom, and how often also it's bound up in ideas of the fates, the classical fates who spin the threads and then cut the threads, and they'll do a slightly lesser degree to the Norns weaving threads together in a web. And those are some of the things that come into this thought, which is called spin and weave. I am not known until I'm gone, until the spinster snips the thread, and you will know the length of me. And you will know it's not the world, because the world will still be here, and I will not be. The turning started at my birth, a dropping spindle forming from a formless cloud the thread I spun. And all I've did for good or ill, for love or gain, remains within the tapestry, never to be undone. The cloth continues, warp and weft, the pattern missing my motif, unless perhaps a child's deed or word of a disciple makes an echo of my own reply to those before, my own receipt. And as the cloth continues on, even for 1,000,000 years, never ending, never to be threadbare, though you may feel the loss of me, may miss my stripe, amidst the warp and weft, amidst the planets faring on that loom, amidst the cloth upon your back, my weaving there. Perhaps that's the thing, not thinking so much about our end. I mean, did we ever spend much time worrying about before our beginning? But knowing that, yes, it was there before, so it continues on without us in a most lovely way. "2013, that was just shy of turning 50, when these thoughts became quite urgent, less urgent now. I wrote this one called Surrender, 2013. Surrendering to life, as if to dying. His steepened road stilled, ran smooth, and held his hand around a dangerous bend. The pull toward the end became a pleasure. The counting down of breaths became forever, and like the treacle time of a car crash, became sweet. Surrendered up to living as if to death, he demanded, "I will come to you in my own time. In the meantime, I am dancing. Flower if you will." And being there, within his life, she came. The flares upon her fabled hair, her breast at angles, walking with the army of the sun, and said, "I love you, however long you be. I must be tenacious." Wrapped her fingers round him, surrendered as to life. The fight became him, majestically. And what if you'd been there? What if somehow you had been to that land beyond and then were brought back here? Again, I don't know if all of these are about death or something else. I think I actually thought of writing this was about coming back from trauma, from abuse, from that sort of severe wounding, that you may not yet be ready to embrace life again, but with the thought of the possibility that you will be able to embrace life. And having written it, I called it Lazarus. When you rose and they asked you to stand, all those kind hands pressing at your back, did you? No. Not alive enough yet. Not alive. As he left, and their tears taken in his cupped palms, you being brought to the door, showing in the sun, did you blanch, carrying the weight? So they have not been dead. They only know the wonder of the miracle. You, cold in the marrow, frightened of the movement in your blood, wonder at this foreign heartbeat. Not alive enough yet. Not alive. And on a similar theme, perhaps, or perhaps not. The tomb. This is the point of the story. The empty tomb, it is just that. The body is not there. And all that was buried, it is not dead. Call it forgiveness. Call it self-care. It walks. And the silent tomb, it talks. It says, I love you. It says, this is the point of the story. The tomb. So that has been a selection of my poems on considering not perhaps the nature of death, but our relationship to it. I forget them all over in one go. First one I read was from 1990. This one's even older, from 1989. But before I introduce that one, just want to say thank you for joining me and listening, and hope you've enjoyed. Hope it's not been too bleak. Hope it's been affable enough. The video of this will be on the timeline afterwards if you want to watch again, listen again. And I'll put the set list into the comments so you know what's what. And as I say, this is even one of the earliest ones from 1989. A poem called What I Had Longed For. It was what I had longed for most on my journey. The single ideal of the search and the waiting. It slammed into me like a wall, undeniable. My resistance desisted. I ceased to exist. It was my death. It came to me like death. The tomb was filled and the hole covered over. The light was denied me at last. I am not yours. I was separate, final, definable, finite. It was what I had longed for most on my journey. The single ideal of the search and the waiting. I slammed into it like a wall, undeniable. Its resistance embraced me. I forced an existence. It was my life. It came to me like life. The cord was cut and the wound scabbed over. The dark was denied me at first. I am not yours. I was to relate. Never final. Indefinable. Always, always infinite.